Welcome to the Made in Iowa podcast. I'm your host, Leisa Fox, in the Iowa Everywhere studio. With me today, we have Amanda Haugen, who is the manager of human resources, and Riley Knutson, who is director of engineering for EP Squared. If you've ever been past their manufacturing facility, you had to scratch your head too and say, what do they do in there? Well, you're going to hear all about it on this week's episode. Stay tuned, share with your friends, and learn about all things made in Iowa. What a privilege to have two powerful women in the manufacturing sector in the studio with me today. I have got Amanda Haugen, who is Director of HR, and Riley Knutson, who is Director of Engineering for EP Squared. I had never heard much about your company. I knew of it probably 20 years ago when you had maybe 30 employees. What the heck? I just got back from the tour. You guys are on fire.
Yeah, we've got 500 employees now.
That is insane. So first, I want you to tell us what you make behind those four walls. Sure. And then second, what is responsible for the huge growth in your industry?
Do you want the HR answer or the engineering answer?
I want the engineering. That's why I have both of you here. I made the mistake of talking to Amanda first, and there were some engineering questions. She's like, I don't know.
That's not me. Yeah.
So let's talk about what you create.
Sure.
And how important it is to every person listening to this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So very high level, we are a manufacturer for relay and control panels. So most of the time when you say that, you're like, what is a relay and control panel, right? And so those are typically going into a control enclosure at a substation. So essentially a substation is a large fenced-in area that you'll see driving down the road. Most people don't even bat an eye on what they are, but they are essentially stepping up, stepping down voltage to transmit that power long distances. No one wants a power plant or anything in their backyard, right? So they're typically in very remote areas, and then we have to get that power to our house to be able to use it, right? So we actually manufacture the panels with the relays that I consider kind of the brains of that substation. So it's taking in, different inputs, different data, and then it's kind of doing things or telling breakers and things to trip to protect that substation.
Gotcha.
Kind of high level.
That is. It's great perspective, though, and important work that you're doing. Amanda, we were talking earlier. How long have you been with EP Squared?
2.5 years.
And you've added how many employees in that short amount of time?
About 100 employees in that time. Yes.
That's crazy growth.
Yeah.
How many total employees now?
500.
500 employees. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason for that growth is a lot of the industry change that's happening in the landscape. Talk about the change in industries.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously politics plays a huge part into, which way the energy sector kind of goes with. And so, you look at like Barack Obama, very renewable focus. So then that industry will kind of shift towards that with a large focus on that. And then, now we're talking a little bit about nuclear, but that's kind of a hot topic right now too. So nothing really changes in terms of what we do with the type of power generation necessarily. But a lot of the growth is being driven by the electrification of vehicles. Data centers is a huge one. I don't know if am I missing anything there? But just, anywhere where there's large power needs, there needs to be a substation. And so that's kind of where we come in and help out and help with that control enclosure in the substation.
One of the other things that I noticed on the tour is that there is a lot of manual work that needs to be done because they're highly customized.
Right. Yep.
And that influences the type of employees that you hire, correct?
Yeah.
Amanda, talk about the most important assets that your employees have to have when they come in and apply for a position.
Yeah, so we're not really looking for education or experience for a lot of our positions, especially on our production floor. Really what we're looking for is aptitude to learn, attention to detail, really good manual dexterity, especially if you're doing the wiring floor with all those connections. But you're not going to find somebody who, I've been wiring, control, and relay panels for 20 years. That's fantastic. But, you're not going to find that. It'd be fantastic if we could, but we'll definitely train.
They're not falling off
in-house.
the tree in the backyard.
Not so much. No, so we'll do all of our own training. So it's really more about attitude and personality.
Yeah, I was going to say, most of the time our hiring is based on more of a cultural fit.
Yes.
And that's been kind of a huge aspect that we've focused on in the last 5 years, I would say, is like we have all this growth. How do we, maintain that culture, but also still, achieve this massive growth that we have? So I like to say, we were talking earlier, 37 years ago, it was a employee count of 2, and it started in the garage. And so, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever, it was 50 people. And so how do you maintain kind of that small business feel as you're continuing to grow to over 500 people? And that's really what we've been focusing on in the last, 5 years, is how do we get the right cultural fit? And then we can teach them, we can train on what we do, because it is so niche, but it's more important that we find the right cultural fit for the company.
Awesome. And we were talking about the cultural diversity that you have. How many languages are spoken on your plant floor?
We have over 12 different languages.
12 languages. And you have 3 different languages spoken in all of your huddles?
Yeah, so we do weekly huddles every Wednesday morning. It's a great opportunity for us to talk about safety, talk about observations that have come through, preventative steps that we can take, keeping people aware of what's around them. And then we dabble in some company announcements as well. And we conduct the huddles, obviously mostly in English, but then we also have a Spanish huddle, Pashto huddle, and Burmese.
That is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
We talked about this as we toured, and a lot of employers are hesitant to hire those that aren't English speaking. And I think you said it was sort of an evolution for you as well. Can you share some of the best practices and some of the lessons that you've learned in integrating other backgrounds into your culture?
Yeah, I'll let Amanda talk more about that too, but I do want to mention, like, most of those pieces and those improvements have come from this cultural team that's focused on improving the workplace, but you can touch on, the specifics. So
Awesome.
Yeah. So what we've kind of found very successful with bringing folks in with different languages is trying to find someone who's bilingual in the language and really queuing them up to be a trainer. That really helps minimize any confusion or incorrectly translating pieces. A lot of our stuff, though, is really following the wiring diagrams, right? You're following lines and you see numbers. And so you don't have to be able to read a ton or anything. You do have to be able to take direction. But, finding somebody that we can partner with and help train folks has been great. We've really thrived on referrals for those who speak other languages, because they kind of create a community
Awesome.
and some good partnerships there. But yeah, definitely getting someone on board to help us out.
I want to jump to the diversity of skills required within your plant floor. And I want to kind of create an image for the audience. If you would kind of go through the different phases of manufacturing that exist within your plant. So if you could kind of go through when the actual supplies come in into shipping and receiving, where we kind of went on our tour today, so that the audience has some perspective on the different skill sets required.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also worth mentioning. So we have been in our facility now for 7 years. But before that, we learned a lot about what we wanted, right? It's like owning your first home. You realize what you don't want, and then and then your second one, you make it right. So we took a lot of that practice when we were building this new facility that we are in. So, we really looked at the flow. So kind of starting, from the very beginning, and kind of one of the back corners is our shipping and receiving area. So every piece of equipment that is ordered on the job is going to come in through that shipping and receiving area. It's going to be stickered appropriately with the job number. It has the PO number on it, and then it has a specific item number to that job. And then it's checked in our ERP system. So right away, we already know, like, this is the right equipment. We know what job it's for, and then it gets placed in a Gaylord that is specific to.
And what I loved about when we were on that tour, and pardon my tone, but it's sort of idiot proof.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to know what the widget is called.
Right.
That widget has a number and there is a diagram that has that number on it. It's sort of like paint by numbers.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't really have to know what the equipment does, and no one has to be familiar with the equipment. As long as you can read the drawing and understand the drawing, then you should be able to do that work.
And that allows you to hire those entry-level positions who then can learn and move up in the company.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got the products. Now we're going where?
We are kind of doing two things at a time now at this point. So it's upstairs in our manufacturing engineering group. So they're really finalizing the structure itself. So what is the panel going to look like? Making any changes to any customer drawings, just making sure that the panel is truly buildable, that it all makes sense and it works.
Let's really quickly pause and identify who those customers are. Because I don't think we've identified that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So majority of our customers are repeat customers, but they are utilities across the United States.
So someone like the common language that we would use are Mid-American and Alliant Energy.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So manufacturing and engineering is making sure the drawings and the specs are correct and accurate.
Yep. And then they are doing the laser nesting. They're programming all the machine to then move it into our what we call our steel prep area. So we have a few different large machinery in that department, and that is kind of the area that probably has the most expensive equipment that we have in our facility. So we have a laser that's doing all of the cutouts for the equipment to actually be mounted in. So none of that is being like hand drilled out or anything like that. And then there is a turret punch in there. So that kind of makes the curled holes that are not sharp around the edges so that the wiring can go through those without getting stuck or getting ripped or whatever, protected truly. And then 2 press brakes. And then we have 2 CNC machines for our ground bars. Am I missing anything in there? Nope.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. So one thing you'll notice, I'm sure, as you walked through the facility is that there is a backup to every piece of equipment there. So the only thing is the laser, but we do partner with another company in the Des Moines area. So if our laser is ever down for 24 hours, we'll call that company immediately. They will come pick up our material. We actually send them all the programs. They have a very similar machine, and they will actually do the laser cutting for us and then bring it back. So there's, some backup for every piece.
Awesome. I want to pause really quickly and talk about the importance of partnerships. As we were coming through there was a gorgeous piece of equipment that looked very expensive. And you mentioned that piece of equipment was bought through a partnership that could be considered competition.
Sure. Yeah.
So talk about that partnership competition tension that exists and why you went forward and were able to do that.
Yeah. I think, one thing that we're always strong about is how do we improve? Our president always jokes he'll retire as soon as we've reached perfection. So I always tell my PMs, I'm like, please help me get to that so they can retire, right? But truly, there's always a strong willingness to invest in purchase large equipment and things to make the panel better. And so when this customer came to us and they said, this is how we want our panels, we do these or we purchase them from, XYZ company, we were like, well, we can do that too. And then we can utilize that for some of our other customers. We love to go to our customers and say, we think that there's a better way to do this. Have you ever considered this? And so to kind of have that expertise, because we see so many different panels come through our facility, it kind of, I think gives us that leg up, right? And so, yes, it was an investment with that customer and we saw a lot of growth with that, but we also recognize that we can make some improvements with other customers to help grow those as well and also improve efficiencies in our facility as well.
And it also eliminated a vendor out of China that you were dependent on for those grommets, correct?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And so, as we just look at more ways we can utilize this machine, I think the possibilities are endless. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So that was in the steel
prep area.
Area. So now we're moving across the plant.
Yep. So then kind of our second part of our steel department, where all of our weld booths are. So I think we have 13 weld booths, I believe. And so, one thing we talked about was how clean that area is. So we have extra ventilation type things in that department just to really help with the air quality in there. And
you couldn't even tell that the welding was going on.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah. And one thing worth mentioning is the whole facility is climate controlled. So to have an area that's air conditioned and heated, and then also have that clean environment is super awesome and something we're really proud of. But yeah, that is where the panel is actually physically being built and welded and, kind of truly assembled, the structure itself.
And I kind of want to illustrate the height and width of these. So what,
90 inches is typical.
Okay.
And then 24 inches wide is pretty standard.
All right. Yeah. All right. And so then we move on.
Yeah, to paint. So in our paint area, we have a phosphate wash that every panel is going to go through, get the grime and oils and things off. And then it goes into our powder booths. And that is where a charge is actually applied to the panels. And then the powder coat paint is then adhering to that charge. So that helps, minimize losses. It makes a nice even coat. The one issue that they'll have is in the corner. So at the very end, they'll blow out that corner and then they'll kind of reapply just to make sure everything's nice and even.
And these were lessons learned from the old facility, right? You didn't have that before.
Correct.
And we're able to put that technology in place.
Yeah.
How did that improve your loss rate or your correction rate?
Sure.
On the paint?
Sure. Yeah. So, at the old facility, we were doing wet paint. And so it's just not as hard. We'd get to the end of the project and we'd see all these scratches. And so we're calling the paint department and they're coming over to fix-ums and touch up. And I mean, everyone's done some touch up paint and you can tell exactly where you touched it up, right? So now with the powder coat paint, we're rarely dealing with any sort of touch up. There's rarely scratches. We always joke that the foreman doesn't even hardly have to watch our PTS panel tracking system fix-ums because it's so rare that he will get a fix-em in that department.
Awesome.
Yeah,
very cool. All right, so we're moving on.
Now we're to our mounting department. So this area is truly where, the panel itself starts to, kind of come to life. So all of the equipment is brought over from our shipping and receiving department. Again, it has that job number and the panel number, and then it's all sorted by that panel prior to it even going to, one of the workers. So the lead's going to go through that, try to, vet out any issues that he or she may find. And then the panel will actually start to get the equipment integrated into it. So they're going to actually, mount each piece of equipment that goes into that panel at that point.
And as we were touring, this is the point that Larry stepped in. Mm-hmm. And Larry is the foreman of that department.
Correct.
And I stopped Larry to ask him, because he does a lot of the hiring for his own department. Mm-hmm. And I said, what are you looking for in your employees? And again, he articulated what you did, Amanda. It doesn't matter what degree you have. It doesn't matter what your experience is. It's your work ethic. It's your listening skills. It's how well you adapt. And I just wanted to, articulate how amazing he was. And then later I said, what was his journey through the company? He's been in all but 2 departments within your company.
Yep.
And you know what that says to me, you guys? You meet these employees where they are, and you allow them to find their own way through the company.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a pretty common story. I mean, there's a lot of others who have jumped around different departments and different areas. We had an engineering support person who came up to me one day and said, I'm interested in recruiting. And I was like, I have an opening. You want to give it a shot? They stole her back again. But now she's the engineering support supervisor, so can't fault her for promoting her career.
So you're not really, if they have a desire, you're not going to say no.
We'll do what we can, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
We love to promote internal growth.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And that explains a lot of your retention because you've got a super high retention rate as well.
Right. And with, just to kind of shed on some of the growth too, a lot of positions may not totally exist yet. And so we've even had some individuals that have said, I recognize that there's a need here. Can we create some position that, fulfills that need? And absolutely, if it's something that we can justify, then yeah. So we recently have kind of reorged our quality team. We now have a quality manager as of, 2 years ago. Before that was, kind of separate. And then what are some, our EH&S manager.
Our continuous improvement whole department is new.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. And who anchored that department? And where did you find them? Because that's a tough role to fill.
Yeah. So we were, just over a year, we became ISO 9001
Oh,
certified.
that's a tough journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, we hired an individual to kind of help out. It was kind of a temporary thing, just to kind of get us over that threshold. But then realistically, once we achieved that, it was like, okay, what's the next thing for you? And that's kind of when that continuous improvement team came about. He's like, I recognized all these areas we could improve, right?
Opportunities, you bet.
Opportunities. And so he's like, how about we start this team? And so actually one of our manufacturing engineers went and joined that team with him. And so now they have it varies 4 to 5, and they hire on interns and do summer projects and things. So
Awesome.
there's not a shortage of projects in that department.
Well,
for sure.
and the innovation that we kept seeing over and over again as we went through the plant. All right. So now we're past the mounting. What comes after mounting?
So next is wiring. So they're going to take that wiring diagram and then truly, wire up point A to point B. I always say that's like one department that I don't think I could ever be successful in, because the attention to detail and like the way that it's bundled is truly miraculous. Looking at how clean those panels look.
And I can say this because I'm the host. You guys can't say this. That's why there were 47% women in that department, because of the attention to detail and the manual dexterity it takes
Correct.
to put those wires where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, a tiny lug. I mean, I don't know what the actual dimension is, but it's so small. Maybe a finger print or whatever size, and they're connecting that into a device, and
there
making it
are
look.
thousands of them
Yes.
in every panel.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the advancement and innovation that you used with your Comax machine in the wiring department. Talk about what led to identifying the need for the Comax.
Sure.
And how that's changed your production.
Sure. Yeah. So really the Comax kind of started because we have this special projects area. And we always say, there's nothing special necessarily about that department. It's more that it's different from what we do because it's repeatable. And so we've had a couple customers where they were new customers, and we did a couple panels and we couldn't be successful with them. They're pretty heavy connection count panels. And so we said, okay, we want to help them out, but how do we be successful? We need to do something different. And that's kind of how that Comax machine came about. So that Comax machine will actually pre-pull and lug one side of the wire.
And when you say lug, the lug is the connector that goes on the end that gets attached to the panel.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then it also prints the destination on it as well. So now the wireman can just pull that wire and they know exactly where it goes. They'll cut off that other side to avoid, the excess slack, and they'll lug it. And then, it's kind of just done with, plug and play type deal. So,
and that improved productivity, but you said 15 to 20%?
15 to 20%. Yeah, we did not have success on the wiring floor. Those were all overages until we implemented that Comax machine, and then
wow.
It was finally coming in under budget.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we talked about the diversity within that department,
Yep.
but talk about manufacturing remains a fairly male-dominated industry. Mm-hmm. Talk about your balance.
Yeah. So we do, for our whole shop or our whole company as a whole, we're about 29% female, but I think the biggest improvement or impressive statistic for me is that 49% of our workforce is from a ethnically diverse, perspective. So it's a huge number.
And you work hard on that. That's not accidental. We're going to pause for a second. How about that? That's fun. No snot. No tears. Good heavens. And I haven't had to do this ever.
Yeah, that's the first time.
All right. So we were on diversity. I'm going to ask that question again. So I'm going to go back to, you talked about how many women. All right, I know where I'm going. Okay. Now that I'm back together. Good heavens. You talked about the diversity in your wiring department, and that's only a fraction of the diversity that's represented across the organization. Talk about your overall diversity.
Yeah. So as a company as a whole, we have 29% female representation, but probably the most impressive statistic is that we have 49% of our workforce having a diverse ethnicity as well.
That's absolutely fantastic. And you guys can tell that you work really hard at that. So congratulations for that. Let's go on to the amount of domestic products that you use in your manufacturing process.
Sure.
I had assumed when I was walking through there that so much of it would have been imported from China and other countries. You corrected me really quickly there. Talk about how intentional that is.
Sure. Yeah. So, with, the renewables and things, in order to get certain tax credits and those types of credits, there is a certain portion that needs to be domestic content. So it's kind of, come about really recently, focusing on that. And so the first time we were asked, it was like, oh, I don't know. We never really thought about it or looked, or, we always kind of knew there wasn't a ton. But we're like, let's actually, run that report. And majority of our jobs are 98 to 99% domestic content, with the remaining 1% being things like desks that go in the control enclosures or chairs, kind of that office type equipment is really the only things that are getting purchased from China.
Okay, we're back to the tour, and we are now past wiring.
Sure.
And throughout this process, you've got quality control that's happening before it moves to the next phase.
Yep.
So where does it go past wiring?
Yeah. So after, obviously, after it's gone through QC in every department and it's moving to the next department, it will go into our testing. So regardless of the style of project, so if it's an enclosure project or it's a panel only project, will still hit testing after wiring. If it's going to go into a control enclosure, then it's going to get what we call our panel test, which is kind of like a pre-test, right? So it's testing everything inside that panel that's just not fully integrated into the control enclosure itself with the other panels in the lineup. So at that testing point, we'll take the schematics, whether they're given by the customer, or we also do design for schematics as well. But we will do a full function test. So, verifying that if we pulse output 102 on a relay, that it's gonna trip a breaker, or whatever the case may be.
Well, there's very little room for error in what you do, because an error would lead to massive loss of life.
Right. Yeah. And
I mean, seriously.
could cause a lot of issues downstream.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely. We also do a couple checks too on the wiring floor. So they'll do a full ring out on the wiring floor just to make sure that point A is actually connected to point B. So that's kind of that first true test. And then so that's majority of the time, that's what our customer would expect. But we take it a step further with all of our panels, and we do that full function test and just verify that the schematic matches the wiring diagram. So we'll vet out a lot of engineering issues at that point too. But we want to make sure when it gets to wherever it's going, that it's fully functional, it's ready to go. There's even been some customers that they said, stop testing, like, we don't want to pay you for that. And we're like, that's fine. We'll give you the money, but we're still going to do it because we have to guarantee our quality and to make sure that it's, not our name being dragged through the mud if there's an issue on site.
Absolutely. And so once the panels are actually put together, they could be shipped out, or they get added to the enclosures. Mm-hmm. So they open the doors to the other side of the facility. And I knew these enclosures would be large. They're huge, you guys. That's insane.
Yeah.
You are literally moving homes.
Right.
That.
Yeah, I mean, like our smallest ones, you think of like a small shipping container or something. I feel like that's always
That's the smallest.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any that small on the tour. So these are absolutely huge.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So could be multiple sections. Really, it's driven by what we can pull down the road and do it, cost effectively. So, you get into some super wide ones, you'll have like police escort and things that you really don't want to get into. So it's more cost effective to actually split it into 2 sections at that point, or 3 sections, or whatever it may be, and just pull it down the road at the 15, 16 feet. And so we've had all different shapes, sizes, you name it. We've done them. I was saying we did one that was 4 or 5 sections, and it was about 15 feet wide and over 100 feet long.
It's insane.
So just like super narrow. It was like one hallway kind of. It was crazy.
Well, and I want to talk about the movement of these huge buildings in your plant floor, and the technology when you did move to the new location that you're using now to move those buildings around.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, at our old facility, it was like, okay, let's find a crane, let's put them on wheels, and then you worry about, what's the floor look like. And so we were really able to figure out what do we want at this new facility, and so that's where the air caster systems came in. And so we have compressed air just in our enclosure department, running throughout that department, and so it'll get hooked up to 4, I like to call them like little balloons. They get blown up and they get put under the enclosure, and really one person could move that enclosure, 50,000 pound enclosure.
It's crazy.
Obviously that's not the safe thing to do. So we typically require 5 or 6.
Okay.
But just how easy it is, it can be moved by one person. So that's really helped with efficiencies and, making sure that we don't want to move enclosures a ton, but if we need to, we can move them around something, not move one to move the other, or, we need to get this one out, so now we have to move 7, we can just kind of move them around. And it's a game of Tetris out there.
Absolutely fascinating because they're so huge. Another thing I wanted to talk about in the partnership realm, there are 2 stories that I'd love you to tell. One is the breaker boxes.
Sure.
And then the other one is how you partner with your customers on avoiding those supply chain issues.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So on the breaker side, we we had a customer come to us and they were looking for some help. They actually had done what we're doing for them in-house, and they were like, it's not really value add for us anymore. We need to change our focus to something else. And we're like, okay, we can help you out with that.
And you had also recognized that they were sort of a barrier to getting more business done.
Right. Yeah. So, in the utility space, I think everyone knows that transformers and breakers are hot commodities right now. They're long lead items. It's kind of like the toilet paper effect, right? From COVID, everyone would go and purchase up a bunch of them just so they could have them. But then that just like skyrocketed their backlog. So now they're trying to dig out of this hole. So they were like, well, this is an easy thing we can outsource. They came to us and, we helped them out, and now they're kind of recognizing that importance, and they're growing that industry, and so I think they're hoping to double or triple the work in the next couple of years. So
wow,
it's amazing. And then also I always say like that they need to understand that us helping out is maybe only 10% of our work, but it helps the other 90% of our work because. Right. You don't need a control enclosure without a breaker, or so we want to be able to help them so that we can also be successful in our other 90% of our work as well.
And we'll talk about the supply chain issues. So many people for decades used that just-in-time mentality, and made for right now, and would only keep enough inventory for right now.
Right.
You've got a lot of inventory there. And I think a lot of that was learned during COVID.
Yeah.
And not having those products and really stopping everything.
Yeah, we like to talk about the good old times when you ordered material and then a couple of weeks or even days it showed up. That's just not quite the case anymore. But I think we did do a really good job during COVID to kind of combat a lot of those issues because we don't do the just-in-time ordering. So our hope is that within 2 weeks of receiving a PO from our customer, we're going to have everything ordered. And so that way, we hold on to a lot of material because of that, but we think it's truly the only way that we can guarantee our lead time. We want to make sure that we're going to deliver that product and it's not going to be short any piece of equipment because no one wants a half-built panel, right?
That isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the blue carts that I saw and the innovation and problem solving in the blue carts. Talk about how they work within your operation.
Yeah, so in our mounting department, we have blue carts that are labeled by job and by panel. And so every piece of equipment will be put and separated out from the job to a panel basis at that point. So then you just would wheel the cart over to the worker at that point, and then they're going to have everything they need for that panel, and they'll be able to start actually mounting all of the equipment. At that time, it's they're going to recognize what they're missing. So we don't estimate jobs in a way that all of the material is going to be there in that department.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but it's tracked starting at that department. So anything that's missing gets tracked onto a piece of paper. At that point, it gets put into our panel tracking system. And so there's visibility to it for everyone in that mounting department. And then we have actually a person dedicated, what we call our late parts cart. So they're going around and just installing late parts that have arrived that's past that mounting threshold, and then they get re-QC'd at that point. And it's a mounting individual too, so obviously familiar with how to mount various types of equipment. But yeah, so at any point, all the way up until testing, material may be added.
Wow.
But
as you get it.
Yeah, but yeah, testing is kind of that stopgap. We're not going to move it past testing. Yep.
So it stays right there.
Yep.
All right. I'm saving this until almost the end. The surprise unveiling. Riley is actually part of a second generation transition within EP Squared. She is the daughter of the current president and never envisioned yourself in this role.
No.
And actually moved to Kansas City, had started your career down there, and here you are back.
Yep. I guess
we were always too enticing.
Yeah, you always find your way back home, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, when I've been around the business for many, many, many years, obviously, worked in just about every department. So it's really what got me started or interested in engineering. So then it only made sense. I said, I want to get into engineering. I want to be an electrical engineer, just like my dad, right? And so it was, okay, you're going to Iowa State. There was no discussion, no, let's look at Iowa, whatever. So then after Iowa State, met my husband, who's from Minneapolis, and he said, I'm never moving back to Des Moines. I don't want to live in Des Moines. I want to live in Iowa. And I'm like, well, I don't want to live in Minnesota. So what do we do? So naturally,
compromised on Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's south at least.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Found myself in Kansas City, and then right around COVID time, kind of. My dad used to always joke. He'd say, "You can come work for me," and I just kind of laughed, and you can always brush it off like, "Oh, sure, Dad, whatever." But then one Friday he called me. He said, "My HR lady's giving you an offer," and I was like, "Oh no!" Now I have to
it's getting real.
Yeah, it's real now. I have to be professional and tell you yes or no in a professional sense. And it was just funny walking kind of through that. It's like every pro, I had the con, and they, I'm sitting down with my husband. And it's like, pro, live in Iowa. His con is live in Iowa, right? So ultimately, it was the best thing that we've ever done, and I knew what I was getting myself back into, right? I love this company. I always say that you're going to have to kick me out of there. I mean, otherwise I'll probably just stay forever.
Yep.
So to have seen all that growth, and then to find myself in the position that, again, didn't exist 2 years ago. We kind of just recognized that the engineering team was getting too big to be run by one person. And so you kind of found myself in that position, just, because that was kind of where my interest lied. So, yeah, I don't know.
I love it. And I love those boomerang stories because I think that the more people understand how much opportunity lies, A, in Iowa, and B, in manufacturing in Iowa, we'd have a lot more people relocating here.
Well, and just the fast pace of the manufacturing environment, and no two things are the same. Every day I don't know what kind of issues I'm going to run into or what problem solving I may have to do, because it's just, it is so fast paced and so different every day. So.
Well, I could talk for hours about this. I want to leave you with a compliment. The sense of calm and intentionality on your manufacturing floor is something I haven't seen at that level anywhere before. It was just so peaceful. And like I said, the word intentional is really what I felt while I was there. So congratulations for what you've put together. I'd like to have you back to dig deeper on any number of these topics. Mm-hmm. But for now, I want the audience to know that EP Squared is only going to grow and only going to build their presence here in Iowa. Congratulations for what you're doing to make that happen. And anything that we can do to help you in that journey, we want to do. Anything that I didn't ask that you wish that I had in this interview?
So. Yeah, we just want to thank you for inviting us on this podcast. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, I know one big thing we talked about was the culture at EP Squared and just how much it's grown. And we started doing culture surveys a couple of years ago, and we have a 90% completion rate. When we just did our last one this year, 93% of employees said that they were very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, or neutral about working at EP Squared. So, a small 93% were positive about their job. Yeah.
Again, intentional.
Yeah, and
that doesn't happen by accident.
No, and we've done a lot of initiatives. We created a culture team, which Riley kind of alluded to earlier. We've got representation from the shop floor, office, all departments. We've really improved communication and employee recognition. We implemented Paylocity a couple of years ago. We use them for payroll, timekeeping, all the HRE stuff, right? But then we started using their community. And so we use that for announcements. We put in there, when we're having our holiday lunch on Thursday, we announced to everybody, hey, don't forget about this. We're also doing jeans and a holiday sweater contest. So That'll be fun on Thursday.
Oh, everybody got their ugly sweaters.
Right? Yes.
Awesome.
And when they wanted recognition, then we started really ramping up using the recognition side on Paylocity as well. So
Awesome.
there's been all those. We've created some ERGs. We've done
What's an ERG?
Employee Resource Group.
Okay.
So that just started this year. We've got one group up and running, the LGBTQ plus group. And
Very
then
cool.
we're looking for members for our caregiver or working caregivers, and then multicultural group that we want to get started.
Oh,
So,
and talk about the challenges that your employees face and stepping alongside them. That sandwich generation, which I can absolutely identify with, is tough. And it's hard to be everywhere you need to be. So you need that support.
yeah, and we've already seen it's great with the ERGs because they can raise awareness for us, like what holidays are we missing, or what policies are maybe not considering different viewpoints. And so they're a great educational resource for everyone. So I think those are just going to keep growing.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Thank you. And please come back in and we'll dig deeper on any one of these
Yeah.
stories.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to Made in Iowa. Subscribe, like, and share wherever you listen. Catch episodes weekly from the Iowa Everywhere studio on the BPC streaming network.